It is the beginning of a new age, an age defined by explorers, innovators, and dreamers. Humanity has always been driven by a simple but powerful instinct to move forward, to discover what lies beyond the horizon, and to understand what comes next. On April 1st, 2026, that instinct came alive once again. At Kennedy Space Center, as the sky darkened, a colossal rocket stood ready. This was the Space Launch System, the most powerful rocket ever created by humans. As its engines ignited, a thunderous roar shook the ground, and within seconds, it lifted into the sky, carrying the hopes of millions.
Inside the rocket sat 4 astronauts, secured within the Orion capsule. Their destination was the moon, not to land this time, but to orbit it, to test critical systems, and to prepare for the next giant leap, humanity's return to the lunar surface. This mission is known as Artemis II, the first crewed journey toward the moon in more than 50 years. The crew aboard Orion represents not just one nation, but the entire world. Reid Wiseman, the commander, brings experience from 165 days in space. Victor Glover, the pilot, becomes the first black astronaut to travel to lunar orbit. Christina Koch, mission specialist, becomes the first woman to journey this far from Earth. Jeremy Hansen, mission specialist, becomes the first non-American to take part in a lunar mission.
Together, they symbolize unity, exploration, and the shared future of humanity in space. The SLS rocket, standing 32 stories tall and filled with more than 700,000 gallons of fuel, pushed the astronauts through intense acceleration. For about 8.5 minutes, they endured powerful vibrations and G-forces as the rocket climbed higher and faster. Then, suddenly, the engine shut down, the moment known as main engine cutoff, and silence replaced the chaos. Soon after, Orion entered an elliptical orbit around Earth.
On the second day of the mission, the spacecraft performed a critical maneuver. At an altitude of about 185 kilometers, Orion fired its engine for nearly 6 minutes. This burn was essential. It pushed the spacecraft out of Earth's gravitational hold and placed it on a free return trajectory toward the moon. From that moment onward, the path was set. No major engine burns were needed. The laws of physics alone would carry them forward. 4 days later, Orion reached the moon.
As it approached, the spacecraft passed behind the lunar far side, the portion of the moon that never faces Earth. During this time, communication with mission control was completely lost for about 40 minutes. This blackout was expected, but it was still a powerful reminder of how far the crew had traveled. At their farthest point, the astronauts reached a distance of 252,737 miles from Earth, breaking a record that had stood since Apollo 13 in 1970. They became the most distant humans in history. When communication was restored, the crew had witnessed something very few humans ever have: the moon's far side with their own eyes. It is a landscape of silence, covered in craters, untouched and unseen from Earth. During the flyby, NASA released breathtaking images showing Earth rising above the lunar horizon, a small blue world floating in the darkness of space. One of the most emotional moments of the mission came when the crew made a personal request. As they passed over the moon's surface, they asked permission to name 2 newly visible craters. One was called Integrity, after their spacecraft. The other was named Carroll, in memory of Commander Reid Wiseman's late wife, who had passed away from cancer in 2020.
Mission Control paused briefly before responding with quiet acknowledgement. Integrity and Carroll crater, loud and clear. After completing the lunar flyby, Orion began its journey back to Earth, following the same free return path. The mission, lasting about 10 days, is not just a journey. It is a full-scale test. Every system is being evaluated: life support, navigation, communication, the heat shield, and parachutes. This is a rehearsal for the future. If Artemis II succeeds, the next missions will follow. Artemis III, planned for 2027, will aim to orbit and prepare for landing operations. Then Artemis IV, expected in 2028, will attempt a historic landing near the moon's south pole, bringing the first woman and the next man onto the lunar surface. As the mission comes to an end, Orion re-enters Earth's atmosphere at speeds exceeding 23,000 miles per hour. Surrounded by intense heat, the spacecraft relies on its shield to survive the fiery descent, before safely splashing down in the ocean. But Artemis II is not the end of the journey. It is only the beginning. The moon has remained silent since 1972, when humans last walked upon its surface. Now, after decades of waiting, that silence is about to be broken. And this time, humanity is not just going to visit. This time, we are going to stay. As the mission comes to an end, Orion re-enters Earth's atmosphere at speeds exceeding 23,000 miles per hour. Surrounded by intense heat, the spacecraft relies on its shield to survive the fiery descent, before safely splashing down in the ocean. But Artemis II is not the end of the journey. It is only the beginning. The moon has remained silent since 1972, when humans last walked upon its surface. Now, after decades of waiting, that silence is about to be broken. And this time, humanity is not just going to visit. This time, we are going to stay.